hello. Why don't I always do that in a silly way, but seriously, hello. Hello, hello, hello. I am Deborah Henson-Conant, and this is an introduction to strings of passion. Today, we're going to learn about the 7 strings of passion that are at the foundation of my own creative development, my own creative expression, my own creative inquiry. I'm going to tell you what those 7 strings are, and we're going to talk about them. I'm going to actually show you I'm going to show you how they exist for me on the instrument. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Deborah Henson-Conant, also known as Deborah Henson-Conant, also known as DHC, and I am a composer, I'm a performer, and I am a creative coach, and I am a lifelong beginner. I'm all those things. And as in any ways that I interact with other people, I love to work with impassioned people. I love to learn from impassioned people. I love to talk to impassioned people. I love to play with impassioned people like you. And as a coach and as a mentor, I love to help you find the way to expressing yourself with your instrument. If you've been in any of my classes, you have heard me say this over and over and over again, because that's what's so important to me. I'm not thinking about your technique, sometimes a little bit to help you, because technique is only there to help you express yourself. But I don't care how big your harp is, or how big your hands are, or how long you've played, or all of that. I just care about your passion and your self-expression. And that's great. That's what's important to me. But do we all have a connection to that self? Do we know what that self is? Do we know how to then make that connection? And someone wrote to me just recently about that and said, I love all this stuff, but I don't know where that self is. I don't know who that self is. I don't know how to find that. And I was so moved by that, because that is what Strings of Passion is about. It is about finding that connection to that you, even if you think there's nothing there. And so often we're not aware of who we are and what we have to express. There are 7 strings of passion. And what I want to do today is I want to tell you what those 7 strings are. I want to tell you a few little stories that help me understand what those 7 strings are. I want to talk about the principles, and then after each principle, I want to very quickly talk to you about how you can practice. Meaning how you can practice each of these principles. And while I am telling you about this, we do have a handout. I should get you that right now. I'll do that. Let's see how quickly I can find it. Oh, look at me. And so you can download that if you want, but it's not important. What it really does is it's just to help you remember afterwards. And if you don't have that handout, I just want you to take out a piece of paper. I'll give you the 7 principles, I'll give you the words as we go along, and I just want you to write down your takeaways. Any little thing that comes to you as we're going along. So, what you just heard a second ago was me giving in to an impulse. An impulse is the first of the 7 strings of passion. Impulse. Before we ever desire to be desired, before we ever long to be heard, we are desiring, we are hearing, we have the impulse to touch, to be, to do, to speak. And this impulse is at the heart of our personal expression. And as we go through life, it is very easy to lose connection to this impulse, either because we forget. Now, I just had an impulse there and I didn't follow it. And the impulse was to sing. Sometimes we lose the impulse because we forget. Sometimes we lose the impulse because there are obstacles in our way. But it's always there. It's always there. And the strings of passion, these 7 steps, they're not steps. They're strings, like the strings of our instrument. And there are 7, just like there are 7 strings in each octave of our instrument. And the point of these 7 strings and these 7 ideas is to connect us back and forward and in and out and around and through to that impulse. So the first string of passion is the string of impulse. The second string of passion is the string of structure. I've just looped this into my looper. Can you hear me speak even when the harp is playing? Okay, great. When I was a little girl, when I was just 7, my mother remarried, so I had a new stepfather. And one night, he sat me down at the kitchen table, and he gave me a glass of warm water, a bowl of sugar, and a string, a spoon, and a pencil. And he told me to take the sugar and spoon it into the water and stir it up until the sugar disappeared. And to keep doing that, and to keep doing that, and to keep doing that until the water was completely saturated. And I could see the crystals of sugar spinning around. And then I tied the string onto the pencil, and I put the pencil on top of the glass of water, and the string hung down into the water. And then I went to bed. And in the morning, I came out and I looked at this glass of water, and in the middle of the glass of water was a string with crystals of sugar crystallized all around it. And I said, wow. How did that happen? And my new stepfather, and by the way, I would say that if you are a new step-parent, this is is a brilliant way to have your stepchild fall in love with you. And he said, sugar will always crystallize. That's what sugar does. But because the string is in the water, the sugar will crystallize around the thread. And he said, I think he said, and you must always look for those strings in life, because they are all around. The strings in the sugar water that will bring ideas to them, that will bring people to them, that will be the foundation for the crystallization of things that are already there. And so to me, the string in the sugar water is the idea of structure. That was the beginning of a lifelong search for me for structure. In fact, almost all the classes, if you've taken any classes from me in workshops at Somerset or you've taken in Hip Hop Academy, almost all the courses that I give online have been up to now about different structures, different musical structures, the basic arrangement structure, the structure of the blues, the structure of little tiny vamps for improvisation, the structure of pieces that I write, because that structure, once you get it, once you can distill it down, is the thing that gives you freedom. So that first string is the string of impulse. The second string is the string of structure. And I practice it by using different structures in my music. And we'll practice it more in the 10-week long Strings of Passion. The first string is the impulse. The second string is the string of structure. The third string is the string of character. Now, if you think about your music, just think about if you read music, think about a page of music. There are notes there all over the page, and then there are a lot of other things. Things like mezzo piano or phrasing lines or accidentals. I mean, we have names for them. All of these tell you about the character of the music. So first, let me tell you about how I first played music when I was a kid, because I didn't start with lessons. My grandmother had a piano, and I would just use it for fun as a toy. Actually, all my families had a piano, but I was left alone at my grandmother's house, so I could just do whatever I wanted with this piano. And so I would always tell stories, and they would usually have certain characteristics. Like, for example, they would always have weather-related things in them. Like, they would always have something like rain, harder rain, thunder, and then they often had something where somebody was coming up out of something and running back in. So a typical story for me would be, it was a lightly raining day when I went out, and then it rained harder. It rained harder and harder and harder, and so I ran down into this cavern where it was very dark. And I looked around me, and what did I see? Well, I saw nothing because it was very, very dark. But then, what did I hear? I heard the sound of thunder, or so I thought. In fact, this rumbling of thunder was the footsteps as they started getting more and more rhythmic, I realized that it was a monster running after me, and he was running up and up and up and up, and at one point I stopped him and I said, "You must stop doing this," etc., etc., etc. Whatever the story was at the time. But I was playing simply with the character. I didn't know the notes I was doing. I was playing with the character of music that sounded like rain to me, the character of music that sounded like thunder. I was playing with volume, dynamics. I was playing with soft, loud, gentle, all those things. Those are the character. And you can see that even with, at this moment, with these three strings, impulse, I had the impulse to tell a story, the impulse to play with this instrument. Structure, I had the structure of a story that I was telling in the moment to myself based on how I liked the story was going to go. And I had character. Just with those three things, at that point, I was already playing with music. So we have impulse, we have structure, we have character. You can play with impulse by well, we'll talk more about that in a little while. You can play with structure by giving yourself a structure in advance, like any of the ones that I give you in Hip Hop Academy, and I can give you even some simpler ones. And in the longer form of Strings of Passion, we'll get a lot of different structures and impulses and all of that. But I just want to go through this quick today. Character, you can play with that by taking away the things that you think are music and literally playing with your instrument. But here's another way to do it. It's really kind of fun. So let's take the idea of pianissimo and fortissimo. So imagine, just say those words, pianissimo, fortissimo. Just say them again. Pianissimo, fortissimo, pianissimo, fortissimo. So pianissimo means very, very soft. Fortissimo means very, very loud. So now let's do it by saying the words as if they had the character of those words. So, pianissimo, fortissimo, pianissimo, fortissimo. Now, even just this little bit, I noticed that in my body is acting different to these words. I'm curious if yours is. Let's just keep going. Let's make it even more pianissimo. So, pianissimo, fortissimo. Make it even more. Fortissimo. This is the character of the words. And the thing that's so interesting about it to me is that as a composer, I only have these two words. But there are so many different kinds of pianissimo and fortissimo. So think about why you would be having something fortissimo. Why would you be fortissimo in your life? Would you be fortissimo because you were telling a secret? You were just telling a secret. Or because you were being very intimate? Would you be fortissimo because you had to be quiet? Just be quiet, be quiet, be quiet. You know, why? The character is about the why. The technique is about the how, but the character is about the why. And as you start to play with all these, it could be thousands of different kinds of pianissimo, that starts to enhance your understanding of music. I want to stop just for 1 minute here in telling you the strings to tell you to think about the fact that each of these strings on the outside, just think about the idea, if there were a mirror image of those strings on the inside, so that as you are playing with any of these concepts, it is both resonating outside in your instrument, what you're feeling inside, and is also resonating back into you. This is one of the things that I've learned about the Strings of Passion as I've gotten more and more deeply into it, that there is this mirror happening. So just think already with those three strings that with impulse, structure, and character, you can be playing music and experiencing it already. And they all interplay. All right, so the fourth string. fourth string of structure is the string of roles. Now, there are many different ways to think about roles. When I first started playing jazz, my teacher was my boyfriend, and he played the bass. And the first thing, just about the first thing he told me was, listen to me, the bass player is always right. So now, why did he say this to me? Was he just a control freak? No, well maybe, but not in this instance. He said that to me because what he meant was you need to have someone to follow if something goes amiss. So let me tell you this, you gotta follow me. You gotta follow me, don't you see? You gotta follow me. So the first kind of following, of the three kinds of following that I think of, or the three kinds of roles, is the idea of fellowship, or leadership and fellowship. I mean, we hear a lot about leadership. We may not hear as much about fellowship, but they go together. And I first learned about them, I learned about them from him, but before that, I learned about them in gym class. Because in gym class, I was taught something that I now know is called contact improv. And it was, I had a partner with me, and the first thing we had to do was, the teacher said, okay, I want you to put your hands up, and you guys can do this with me right now on the screen, and I want you to follow each other. So Lori was my partner, and she said, okay, person A, so I was person A, you move, and person B follow you. And so Lori would follow me and do whatever I did with my hand. She said, you must move slowly enough that the person can follow you, because leadership is about making it clear what you're doing so people can follow you. Then she had us switch, and I followed Lori. And then at a certain point she said, okay, now follow each other. And we were able to do that. So one of the things that I learned was, in leadership, you have to make it clear what you are leading people for. They can't follow you if they don't know what's clear. That following is a beautiful thing to do. It's very exciting to do, and that you can switch back and forth. And I got this idea of the beauty of switching back and forth when I started playing jazz, and I started realizing there were these roles, which I'm going to show you a little more about in a second. I began to and that they switch in jazz. You can switch them at certain points. I found this so beautiful, to get to have the role of the leader and then the follower, and switch back and forth. So the first idea of roles is this idea of leadership and fellowship, and this gives you freedom. For example, if I know that the bass player is always right, if I get lost, it gives me the freedom to know how to get back on. The other thing is, in jazz, when you know what the role is, well, let me show you this next one first, and then because these two fit together, leadership and also these three roles. There are three roles in the music that we normally play. And it's wonderful because our harp shows them to us beautifully. Many instruments primarily play a specific role. We are unusual in that we can play all the roles. But by that token, we can sometimes get confused about the fact that there are roles. If you look at your harp and you think about the fact, and this would be true of a piano as well, it's very, very clear on the harp. You can see that the bottom third is basically the bass role, the middle part is the accompaniment role, and the top part is the melodic role. This became clearer and clearer to me as I began writing for orchestra, and I began noticing, okay, there's four musical families, there's the woodwind family, there's the brass family, there's the percussion family, and there's the string family. But within each family, and this is very clear if you look at an orchestral score, it's always laid out so that the higher instruments are at the top of that part of the score, and then it goes down. The ones that kind of play the middle part are in the middle, and then the lower instruments are down at the bottom. It's not true of the French horns, but just ignore that. There's always got to be some exception. All right, enough of that. So what I started to realize was these three roles. There are three roles: bass, accompaniment, and melody. And that was very clear to me from jazz because there was a bass player. I had to be taught to play accompaniment and to stay within a certain area. And I began to realize, oh, wow. And then there's the sax player who doesn't play bass and just kind of comes in and is a soloist. Okay, that's very clear. Those roles are very clear. And what I loved about jazz, well, let me show you these roles for a second, first of all. So, because they go along with character. So what I just did, that's a bass line, but it's also got a certain character. I'm making it kind of thumpy and very clear. And it's way down here. Now, if I wanted to add accompaniment, which would be in the middle part, and I'm going really fast here, but here comes my bass line. I would probably... Okay, I like this. I'm going to add that. Should be in. Okay. So notice that I was playing really kind of, it's probably louder in there than I want, but I was playing very close to the strings. I was stopping it. I was playing chords. That's the accompaniment. That's the character of the accompaniment. I'm playing it in the accompaniment area. It's got the character of accompaniment. It adds harmony. It goes along with the bass. Now watch what I do if I play the melody. Notice when I play melody, I'm just playing melody. That was really hard for me to do at first because I was like, I have the whole harp, I'm just up here, what am I doing? I'm adding character. I mean, it's all got character. So you can see, whoa, I could add that's kind of cool. Unfortunately, I could go on and on. So, not unfortunately, but fortunately. So those were the roles, the bass role, the accompaniment role, and the melodic role. They each have their character. If you can imagine that in a jazz band, the bass player is playing the bass role, the guitarist or the harpist or the piano player is playing the accompaniment, and maybe the flute player or whatever is playing the melody. And at a certain point, we switch. For me, this was especially true because I was just playing with a bass player. So we would switch roles all the time. And that's when I began to understand that by having the roles, we were given freedom. The roles gave us freedom. Because we knew, what the parameters were. So at that point, I had the impulse. I wanted to play jazz. Structure. Each jazz tune is its own structure. Character. I began to understand. The character and the roles really fit together, and I began to understand what my roles were. Now, this is in all music. You'll see this all over, all these concepts all over, and you will begin to see it in yourself as well. You will begin to understand that when you're doing things with people, if you understand what your role is, you can have a lot more freedom. Now, sometimes we chafe at those roles. We will chafe at the roles if we feel that we're stuck in them. We will chafe at structure if we feel it is being imposed. But when there is an internal structure and when there are roles that are flexible, that we can switch around, they give us freedom. All right, so we have impulse, we have structure, we have character, we have roles, and then we come up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the string of practice. Oh, ask me to tell you again about roles. No, there's one really important thing that I want to tell you about roles before we go on. There's the third one. And the third one is that a role can inform you. Here's an example. I usually tell one example about a teaching situation, but I'm going to tell you a different example today. I have often been confused in my life. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but I've sometimes been confused. And sometimes I will end up having imaginary characters in my head who seem to know more than I do. In fact, I had a whole committee of imaginary characters called the world authors. And I would just imagine that they were not inventing the world, not creating the world, but they were writing the world down as it happened. And one night I had the idea I would imagine myself going to them and asking them, what should I do about this particular thing? And of course the answer was always the same. They would be asking questions instead of telling me what to do. But one of those characters became my emissary to the other world. And one night, I was writing in my journal, and I decided to write to her and to ask her a question about something that I totally did not understand. And I think some of you have probably experienced this before, that by asking that question, my hand suddenly started writing the answer. And it was an answer to something I really didn't know. And it was an answer in a different voice that was so much kinder than my voice to me. And what I realized as I did this more and more was that I had used her role. I had given her the role of emissary to this other world. And in that role, she had helped me access a part of myself and answers that I needed. And so a role can also be like a kind of archetype that gives you an insight into your own world, into your own self, into your own questions. And so that's the third way in which roles can give you insight and freedom, and why they are such an important part of the strings of passion. Impulse, structure, character, roles, and the fifth is practice. I like to tell this story about the first time I went to Scotland, and when I heard this wonderful group there, and they had made their first or second album, and I listened to the album, and they were such wonderful players, and they also sang, and which is something I wanted to do, but I wasn't doing. I mean, I'd sung it as a child, but I never sung professionally. And so their first album came out, and they were singing on it, and I thought, I don't know, their singing isn't as good as their playing. I don't know, I wouldn't let somebody hear me like that. So I went up to one of them and I said, wow, I'm just curious, you're such a great harp players, why do you sing? And she said to me, because that's what we do. And I was like, okay, whatever. So the next year I came back, they had another album out. It was another great album. They were singing, and their singing was better. And then the third year I went back, they had another album out. They were singing, their singing was really good. And by the fourth album, their singing was beautiful. Equally, equal to their playing for sure. But mine was not any better. And that is when I began to understand that practice, you have to be bad to be good. If you are not willing to be how you are, which maybe other people, your brother or whoever else is going to tell you is bad, if you are not willing to express yourself in that way, you will not ever become what you would call good, which is comfortable, able to express yourself, able to have the sound that you want to reach other people. You have to be bad to be good. You have to embrace that. That's been one of the most important principles of my life, is to embrace that. I recently realized that it is only one side of practice. And the other side of practice is something that I am doing so much more now, which is practicing once I can already do something, not to get better, but to develop a practice that helps me get deeper. I noticed as a classical musician when I was first starting that I would learn something until I had it, and then I would learn something else. It would be going on to the next achievement. And when I started playing jazz, we were playing the same tunes over and over and over again. And then when I started performing, I began to discover that the more I performed something, the deeper it got. And so this idea of developing a practice of doing what you already can do at a deeper and deeper level. That is one of the things that is very much at the heart of Strings of Passion. And that is one of the things that I'm so excited about in the 10-week program, is about building that in, because that then leads to something at the end of this Strings of Passion, which is fluency, which I'll tell you about in a minute. So we have impulse. We have structure. We have character. We have roles, and we have practice. We have 5 of the strings of the 7 strings of passion, and already we have so much. We have so much. Even if we only had 1 finger on each hand, we could do all of this. Of course, we could do it on any instrument or without an instrument. And so that brings us to the 6th string of passion, which is the string of deconstruction or distillation. And this is the moment when I would be asking you, what have you written down? What have you written down on that sheet of paper? Your takeaways, because that is your distillation. That is your deconstruction. One of the most powerful things that you can do is to get beyond and beneath all the details, down to a deconstruction of the simplest aspects of anything that you are trying to do. So I would like to take a moment, I'm going to play here, for you to put in there, into the chat window, any takeaways. I call them takeaways. But they're often distillations. You don't have to worry about if it's brilliant, or if it's silly, or if it's simple. A deconstruction often comes about as if it's a metaphor. Susan's saying you have to be bad to be good. I'm good at bad. I'm very, very, very good at bad. Well, that is fabulous, Susan. You, if you're very good at bad, and if you can embrace being very good at bad, you're gonna get so good at being you. At being you. And that's what all of this is about. It's about connecting to those 7 strings that are inside of you, and connecting them to the 7 strings that are outside too. Claudia says rules are roles. She says roles are like archetypes. This would be great to hear about more. Roles are like archetypes. Well, let me tell you just a little bit more. Just imagine, Claudia, some night, and I know you've already done this. You light the candles all around your heart, and you put on maybe a sheet from your bed, and you wrap it around you, and you walk to your harp as if you are the goddess Athena. And you reach for your strings, and you play a single note, and you let it ring into the world. and you let that single note ring the world into being. That is the experience of playing like an archetype. Just simply taking on that role. I can say the idea of taking on the role of Athena, and my whole body changes, and my approach to the instrument changes. I could go and say, stand up straight, approach the harp with your hand out like this, play, a single note. I could say that, or I could say, walk into the room like Athena. The instrument brings the world into being. Now play it. And the instrument, that role, has informed that whole experience. Jody is saying, I have to embrace myself and allow myself to be bad in order to be good, and allow myself to go with all my impulses. I love that, Jody. I love that. You're making me think again of one of the things that I really loved to do when I came to the harp as an adult beginner when I was 22, and I was practicing, and I was in orchestra immediately, and I didn't know how to read music, and I was struggling, and I worked so hard, and I would have little check marks off on the stuff that I did, and I was so hard, and I remember throwing myself on the floor and saying, why do I always have to try twice as hard just to be half as good as everyone else? It was so hard for me. And I gave myself a treat. At the end of every day, every practice session, I would play the piece in its complete entirety, forgetting about playing the correct notes. So if I was playing like Introduction and Allegro, I don't remember exactly how it goes, I would read the music, I would read through the piece, and I would just play anything. Like if it was going down, I would go down, and I would sing, or da 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 da. If anyone came in, they would either have no idea what I was doing, or they would have thought I was completely crazy. But I was actually embracing, allowing myself to be bad, to be the way I was, so that I could actually play the entire gesture of the piece. So there is an art. There's actually an art to being able to embrace being bad, and there is also a type of protection that you need to give yourself. So, and that's one of the things that I talk about in a lot of my classes, but especially in Strings of Passion, how to create a safe place for yourself. Sorry, I'm just having this epiphany, because when I was at the doctor yesterday, I walked into this room, and I think there was somebody, maybe they had a diet thing there, and it said something like, use your moments of willpower to prepare or pave the way for your moments when you don't have the willpower. I just saw it on the board, and I'm just realizing that one of the things that you can do as an adult is to create safe places for you to be bad. In other words, you use one part of yourself to protect another part of yourself. You use, so you make sure that nobody's home when you dress up like Athena. So that nobody can come in their well-meaning way, say the thing that is going to destroy that impulse. And this has happened to me. One of the most powerful pieces that I have ever written is called Catcher in the Rye. It's based on whatever, I don't know, it's based on two things, a book and a song. But it's really this powerful thing. And the first time that when I was just starting to develop it, I played it with my band, and I played it in front of a very, very small group of people. And right in the front row, and it wasn't good yet, but the idea was there. And there was a woman in the front row, a friend of mine, and she just looked at me and she went, and everything in me died. And I could not let that piece out. And it took probably 15 years after that before that piece came to life, and then became really one of the most powerful pieces that I ever did. I do it with symphony orchestra. So This is all based on Susan saying, I think it was Susan saying, being bad to be good, and you're so good at it. I can't remember. You guys, you're saying such great things. Let me go back. What Jody's saying, I have to embrace myself and allow myself, yes, and how to, anyway, we'll talk about this in the longer strings of passion. Barbara's saying, I love this, especially the character and allowing the impulse to play out. That's great. And Donna is saying, love the role playing. I've always been more fearless playing a character. Yes, and you can do this. When I first started playing, in my very first time that I had a harp concert, I remember standing off stage and thinking, I don't know how to walk on stage. I don't know how to do this. But my mother was an opera singer and a diva. And at that very moment, I thought, I'm just going to be my mother. That's it. I'm just going to do that. And I was able to walk on like her, be her, and eventually express myself through this. But I started with that. That's great. And Dawn, it sounds like you're saying that too. More fearless as a character, easier to do with the lights out. You have to let go of your visual connection. So you're learning a lot more about yourself. Barbara's saying, catch her in the rye like catch me in the raw. Ha! Well, not exactly. So this is the sixth string in the string of passions. This deconstruction, distillation, takeaways, the moment when you make something your own. For me, many times, distilling it down to an idea of a role that I can take on, gives me the opportunity to express it in very so many ways. Very so many ways. That simple idea of taking on a role allows me to be, even if it's just Athena in her good moments, Athena in her bad moments, Athena as a child, Athena, whatever. And then when I'm done with that, well, wait a minute, what if I was Mercury? This is a distillation, one small idea. And for those of you who have been in any of my online classes that talk about structures, you'll know that, for example, I talk about the 5-part arrangement structure or the 12-bar blues. It's a simple structure. Yet, with that simple structure that's been distilled, the 12-bar blues is a distillation, a deconstruction of millions of pieces down to one idea that you can use as a seed to grow infinite number of blues, in infinite number of keys, in infinite number of rhythms. And that's why I chose it, because it's so, so, so powerful. So, this leads us to the 7th string. And the 7th string is the string of liftoff, or sometimes I call it the string of fluency. And if you've been in any of my close classes, you've heard me talk about fluency. I used to travel a lot in Germany and tour a lot in Germany. And since stories are so much an important part, I'm just realizing now why, that they've always been such an important part of my experience of music. I translated all my stories, and so I would say them in German. And one night I got so tired, I could not remember. I mean, I had memorized these all, but I couldn't remember what I was saying. And so instead of talking, I acted out what I was saying, because that was the best that I could do. And instead of just watching me, suddenly I felt a connection to the audience. Suddenly I knew they were with me. Suddenly I experienced the experience of fluency. I was not speaking German any better. I had actually given up speaking German in that moment. and I was speaking me. And what I've learned since then is that that moment of liftoff is not the moment when you've got it all. But that moment of liftoff is when you let go of everything that you don't have. And you actually embrace and speak with what you do have right now in this moment. when we are searching for that connection to ourselves, we almost never go from glory to glory. Okay, we never go from glory to glory. We go from one type of being lost and found to another type of being lost and found. But what happens as we take that journey is that the strings of our instrument, we're lucky because we play the harp, and those instruments help us to hone and touch and make the resonance of the instrument inside of us, that parallel. And what Strings of Passion is about is learning to do that more, to make that a lifelong practice of taking the outer instrument and helping it resonate the inner instrument, and taking the inner instrument and helping it resonate into the outside world. So let me see what you guys have said. Nancy says, when I try playing classical harp repertoire and get frustrated, I do this. I just play whatever I play with the harp. This gives me relaxation and I come back better. Susan says, my best performance ever was a trouser roll, and most fun criticism, most fun. So a trouser roll, for those of you who don't know theater, is a role of being a man if you're a woman. And it is wonderful because you get to get out of yourself, and when you get out of yourself, you let go of all the, so much of your stuff that's been holding you back, the obstacles, I keep thinking of being Gulliver and Gulliver's Travels, all those little slender threads that hold you down. And Susan is also saying, criticism does last for years. Hearing you say this makes me feel not so alone with some of the cruelty well-meaning folks have bestowed on my work. And I will say that is very succinctly and well put. The pain that well-meaning, it's not that mean people, somehow that can be easier got over. It is the well-meaning, the people who love you and want to protect you from yourselves. And that's one of the reasons why it is so important to get into a community. That's one of the reasons that I have my Harness Your Muse mastermind. That's a very small community, so that people can feel free, because only when you are free to express these parts of yourself can you go beyond that stage. I always think about this. I always think about everything that comes out of anything comes out slimy. Babies don't come out smelling nice and covered with baby powder. Butterflies do not come out of the cocoon. They come out with slime. This is how things are born. And when people don't realize that, if they have not been part of that experience, or they haven't been willing to do that, they get scared for you. They think that you're ruining something, when in fact, you are letting something be born. And this is why it is so important to be connected with a community that you can feel safe in. And why the smaller, like Harness Your Muse has only a very small group in it, because people are expressing much deeper parts of themselves in ways that need to be supported. And this is why when I give feedback in any of my classes or anything, I am not, unless you ask me I can't even answer the question, what's wrong? Maybe unless you ask me, how am I getting my way here or something like that, because I am looking at what are you trying to do and how can I help you do that? Because that's been the most helpful feedback that I've gotten, is not whether somebody tells me it's good or bad. What are you trying to do? Okay, I see that. All right, so let me help you try to get there. And that's what the kind of feedback you want when you're developing. And Gail is saying, even a negative reaction from the listener is better than no reaction. Right, because when there's no reaction, you put your own definition on and you make it way worse. Wanting to share the present of music does leave us vulnerable. Yes, it does. It does. We are opening ourselves. I am still struggling to share certain parts of my music that I literally call secret music. If you looked behind this curtain here, you would see a binder that says DHC's Secret Songs. Those are songs that maybe only 2 people in the world have ever heard, because I feel so vulnerable about them that I'm scared, that I protect myself. No, will I always want to? No, I don't. I don't always want to. Claudia saying applause. Nancy saying applause. Clap, clap, clap. Lisa saying you are seriously incredible. What a treat to see you play. Thank you. Oh, you're saying that. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. And Lisa's put in here the strings of passion. Barbara saying looking so forward to the new class, motivated to catch up on the present course. Here's the thing for all of you who are already in Hip Hop Academy. Don't worry about it too much. One of the things about my courses is that I am giving you they're all about these little structures as you go through. And one of the reasons I wanted it to be a full year program is so that you will start to understand that these are all little structures and you'll use them in different ways. And you don't have to get everything. You get something. Get a little something that helps you, you move forward. You get a little something that helps you move forward, and you go forward. And there are people who've taken, Hip Hop Toolkit, 4 or 5 times, and they're getting stuff out of it each time. And I do that every time I take a class. I just keep taking it. I just keep taking it because I know I'm going to get deeper and deeper into it. And Lisa's saying, how can they find more about Harness Your Muse? If you are interested in Harness Your Muse, it's a limited, but there is an application. The first thing you should do is just email me and tell me that you're interested. And then I'll send you to the application, or you can go to harnessyourmuse.com. And I want to say that this is not like a program where you need to be the best, it's like you're this good and then this. This is a program about commitment. It's about it's about getting to the next level of whatever it is you want to get to. And that doesn't have to do with your being at any particular level now. It's a project, like some of the projects that people have done, many of the people in it create their first show. One of the people in the program decided to spend a year asking the question, am I a composer? And what would I do if I was? And she is now the finalist in a composition contest. So the program is about knowing the next place you want to be, or having a feeling that you want to be in a next place. And then we work to get you there. I'll do a webinar that's just about Harness Your Muse, hopefully soon. But I was just so excited about this that I wanted to tell you about it. I really want to see you in Strings of Passion. Tell all your friends about it, because this is a great time to come into the Academy. For those of you who are already in, it's great that you had some structure and now you're going to take this. Everyone else, it's great to get this first. And if there's nothing else that you do in 2017, what I want you to be able to do is to connect to your strings of passion, the ones inside you, and to be able to bring them out and express them to the world and to yourself, and have that greater and always greater resonance between yourself on the inside and yourself on the outside. Thank you so much. And Lisa, thank you so much for being here. And I'll see you all again very soon, and I will post this as soon as I can. Okay, bye everybody. Bye. Hi, this is a little moment behind the scenes afterwards. Alyssa just told me that one of her favorite takeaways from the webinar was something that I said before I actually came on the camera, because I often talk to the audience before I officially start the webinar. So I'm going to share that with you now. If you feel like you're not getting stuff, don't worry about it. Focus on what you do get, even if you just get one little nugget. And take that. That's your takeaway. That's the thing for you. Take that away and think about that. I was just thinking this morning about the fact that so much of the stuff that I have innovated in life is because I didn't understand something, or I missed something. And so I ended up trying to do it a different way. And so that experience where you're just like, I don't know, I'm going to try this anyway, that will often lead you to a lot of creative places. So it is great when we can use the vagaries and imperfections of our connection through technology to really allow us to practice letting go of everything having to be perfect. I hope you enjoyed this, and I look forward to seeing you in Strings of Passion this year. You can learn more at stringsofpassion.com. See you soon.